welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks, and I'm joined by the David Wagner to my Daniel Farker. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Oh, Justin Peach, what a weekend, what a weekend. Personally, I would say the action this weekend was even more incredible than that guy who's drank 2,000 pints in 200 days.
I don't know. I feel like that achievement, shall we call it, albeit reckless, was quite an achievement. I think that eclipses most of what happened this weekend. I'm sorry to put a downer on Championship football. Being a Championship podcast, we're never going to be a 2,200 pints in or 2,000 pints in 200 days podcast. But that is some achievement that I do not condone.
It's true, isn't it? It's like I've never been so disgusted but so impressed at the same time. Yeah. It's quite remarkable. If any of our listeners from abroad have no idea what we're talking about, there's a guy who's gone viral on social media for drinking 2,000 pints in 200 days. That's 10 pints a day for over 6 months, which is
not healthy.
It's insane, isn't it? It takes hair of the dog to a whole new level, and I just don't know what to think of it.
I'm on the same boat. I don't know whether I'm impressed or disgusted. And I'm definitely not. Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm not in between. I want to be on either side, but I just don't feel like I can. I don't feel like it's responsible for me to be. I don't think it's responsible for me to be impressed by it, but I also think it's really boring of me to not be impressed by it. I don't know where I sit, Ryan. Oh my God, it's a dilemma. I don't think I can carry on this podcast. I need another 10 minutes just to wrap my head around it.
I'm sorry that I brought it up. I'm sorry that I brought it up because it genuinely is one of life's great ponderances. Should we be impressed by this or not? I honestly don't know. What I can tell you I'm impressed by, ladies and gentlemen, is the Championship this weekend. Welcome to the #1 Championship podcast, the second tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Yes, we're going to go through all the weekend's action. Plenty for us to get our noses into here, including Wayne Rooney's first game in charge of Birmingham. Of course, we'll get onto that very shortly, and a remarkable comeback by Leeds United. More on that very shortly too. We'll do the polls near the end of the show where we get the thoughts of the listener on Twitter or X or whatever it's going to be called next week, and then we get Simon Grayson's Hateful Eight right at the end to round up the show. So let's kick things off with Wayne Rooney, who suffered defeat in his first game in charge of Birmingham. They lost 1-0 away at Middlesbrough. 3-word review here from Max, who's a Blues fan. Truly dreadful performance, and it's got to be said, just 5 shots for Birmingham here. I'm not sure that's the no-fear football that the Birmingham owners said they wanted to bring to the club after sacking John Eustace. Not a great start for Rooney. Admittedly, Middlesbrough away is very tricky, but his first 5 games in general are very tricky, and it's not going to be a good look for him if he fails to win any of his first 5, is it?
Yeah, it's not the best position to be in, obviously, and I know it's a cynical take to suggest that it's not a front foot attacking fearless football, was it? Because they sat behind Middlesbrough. They wanted to make it stodgy and difficult for them, and didn't really do that. That game plan didn't really work because Middlesbrough absolutely battered them. I think it was, they're quite fortunate to be 0-0 up until the 89th minute. But you are right, that first 5 games is tricky, and Rooney, especially in this game, will tell him exactly what he needs to get out from this team. They didn't really control the ball. They weren't composed enough in good areas in the final third, and they were just, every time they got the ball, they lost it. So there's a lot of things that Rooney needs to sort out. And I don't think it would have been the same under John Eustace, but I think what Rooney needs to get sorted is games like this, and they're going to have a few of them in this run, is to make them a lot harder to beat and a lot harder to break down than they were, because they weren't. They just simply weren't.
Well, that's why when we saw this statement from Birmingham about dismissing John Eustace and then wanting to bring a no brand of a brand of no fear football to the club, why the whole Rooney appointment was so eyebrow raising, because we saw Wayne Rooney's derby plenty of times, didn't we? It was very pragmatic, wasn't it? And the funny thing is, John Eustace this season has mainly gone with a 4-2-3-1, with the front 4 being made up of attackers. Rooney's gone with a 4-3-3 and taken one of those attackers out for a midfielder. So already Rooney's football is looking more fearful than Eustace's was. The old saying that bears repeating around this whole situation is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That applies to the owners with regards to changing manager, but it also applies to Rooney, because he seemed to play with the handbrake on here, which we haven't seen really with Birmingham so far. Jay Stansfield has been one of Birmingham's best players so far, and he was playing in a number 10 role, coming deep to get the ball and run at defenders. But Rooney's put him on the wing, which meant he wasn't anywhere near as influential as he has been so far for Blues.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's one game. We can let them off for that. But I think Birmingham fans will be hoping for a lot more from their game at home to Hull on Wednesday, because from what I saw here, this was not no fear football at all, and it wasn't anywhere near as good as what we've seen so far under Eustace.
Well, exactly. I know we need to give him some sort of a break, but this is what we were saying when the news broke about John Eustace leaving and Rooney coming in, is the appointment of Rooney and removing Eustace, given the position that Birmingham are in the table, just puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on Rooney to get results quickly and straight away. And you are right that changing things up the way he did probably didn't need to, but he probably was overthinking the fixture, because Middlesbrough have been rolling nicely. They've been in great form.
Yeah, and we were wondering, Justin, weren't we, in midweek, whether Rooney may be, going back to those pragmatic ways that we saw at Derby, just because Middlesbrough have been flying so much. But, you want a bit more than what we saw, didn't we? For example, if John Eustace was in charge here, they'd have had much more of a go at Middlesbrough. They may still have lost, but we would have seen a lot more than what we saw with this Rooney team, wouldn't we?
Well, but I think the key thing is that Middlesbrough should have been 3 or 4-0 up. I think the scoreline flattered Birmingham. And it's not necessarily the lack of attacking play that was an issue from John Eustace's, it's not John Eustace's, Wayne Rooney's point of view. It's the fact that they conceded so many chances. They need to improve. They need to do better. And quite simply, it wasn't a good enough performance and it's going to need to be fixed going forwards.
Sedgefield's 3-word review for Middlesbrough. Super Michael Carrick. And Middlesbrough are absolutely flying right now, aren't they? 6 wins on the bounce in all competitions. Incredible, really, that this time last month they were still searching for a first league win. How quickly things can change. The question is, Justin, how far do you think they can go?
It's a similar position to what it was when Carrick came in last season, wasn't it? The fact that they were so down and out, or it felt like they were so down and out, and things weren't going their way, and then suddenly it just clicked when Carrick came in, and it feels the same here. Carrick's a really intelligent coach, and he feels like he's finally getting more out of this team. And like I was alluding to or suggesting, we're talking about Wayne Rooney, they should have been home and hosed before the 89th minute. But even that break with Morgan Rogers, and I think it was Matt Crooks, the combination, it was really good play. And I think that the fact that they tried that over and over again, I think it's a sign of a good side. And I do think they can carry on. I don't think they can carry on winning games in the manner that they have been. But certainly, if they can string together several runs like this, then yeah, sure, they're going to be knocking on the door of the playoffs and will surprise quite a few teams. But just need to keep going and keep the good times rolling, because as I say, it was really, really, it was looking very bleak mid-September.
Well, the crazy thing is, he's essentially got them doing this well with their B team from last season, because only 2 of the outfielders which started against Birmingham are new signings. The rest of them were either playing regularly for Borough last season or are players who have had to bide their time in getting a chance to play regularly. Dan Barlas is a good example. They signed him in January, only started 3 games last season. He's come in here and his pass basically started the attack, which led to the goal for Borough. Isaiah Jones was in and out of the team, has now been one of their best attackers this season. Josh Coburn had to go out on loan to League One to get game time and has looked really good so far. So despite this team still being unquestionably weaker than last season, I don't think that's up for debate. They're still flying, and Michael Carrick is once again proving why he's such a good manager when his team gets playing. And when that happens, they're difficult to play against, but brilliant to watch.
Well, exactly, and I think this is a good game to highlight in the fact that the game was 0-0 for so long, but they still kept knocking on the door. They still kept plugging away. They still kept testing Birmingham City right up until the end, and it's one of those games that would have felt like 2 points dropped had they not found the winner. So that late winner by Rodgers is going to create confidence. It's going to breed confidence. It's going to breed that mentality to keep going at your opposition until the very end of the games. And it might be a bit of a cliche, but good teams do that. And I think Michael Carrick's still evolving this Middlesbrough team. They're going to go through a few more bumps, but certainly it's obvious, certainly in a much better place now than they were 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, and they should have scored a lot more goals than they have done so far this season. They're the side who are underperforming their expected goals attack-wise the most this season. I mean, Josh Coburn himself could have scored a couple against Birmingham, but He's getting in the right positions, which is the main thing. This Middlesbrough side are creating the chances, which is the main thing. And as long as they keep creating chances, as much as they have done, then they'll score plenty this season. Borough now up to 13th with the 5 league wins in a row, just 2 points off the top 6. Leeds came from 2-0 down to beat Norwich 3-2 in the Daniel Farke derby. What a game this was. Some of the football on show was brilliant, and then the limbs when Crescencio Somerville scored the winner, just exceptional. A great advert for the Championship, wasn't it? If the EFL wanted to, they could put the highlights of this game on a TV advert and it would do wonders. That's how good an advert it was. James's 3-word review for Leeds: Crescencio Ciro Somerville. And he's the man who we have to talk about here, Justin. Both of his goals were absolutely exceptional, and he's one of those players who's come down to the Championship this season, and I'm looking at him thinking, you simply should be playing at a better level than this, shouldn't you? Because he is class.
Was it against Liverpool last year where he really sort of arrived on the scene?
Yeah, I can't remember who it was exactly, but there was one goal, wasn't there? I think it was a brilliant bit of skill before the finish, which made me go, oh, this guy looks a real player. And then he didn't really kick on after that, did he? He was still one of Leeds' better players last season, but ultimately he was one of those who didn't really hit the heights that I think many people were hoping.
But there was sparks there, and you've seen it again this season. I still think there's an incredibly raw player there that still needs refining. But what a manager to play under in Daniel Farke, to give you the licence to express yourself. And we saw that with his goals. That I think it was his first one that came in off the post, and he's come inside, and it's a lovely curled effort. Not a lot of pace on it, just a lot of placement. It just gets out of the way of, I think it was George Long in the Norwich goal. It was a beautiful goal, and he's got 6 goal contributions in 9 games this season. He's been a really important player for Leeds, and I think if Daniel Farke is going to continue being successful, then he's got to continue to getting more out of this front 3, front 4, whatever it's going to be at any point. But Somerville again showed exactly why he's quality. He's 21 years old as well, which is quite frightening. The fact that he's got so much quality and technical ability at this age. That if he continues progressing, he's going to be a very tidy player.
Yeah, I didn't realise he was only 21 because he's had a full season of Premier League football under his belt, haven't he? So I just assumed he was older. But he is such a classy player, glides across the pitch so effortlessly, and then can produce when it matters in front of goal as well, as we saw here. On his day, he can just tear any defence apart, and that's what we're starting to see now. A phenomenal player who's going to be so important to Leeds' promotion chances. Leeds now 3rd, 6 points off Ipswich, who have a game in hand. I think we both agree, while Leicester and Ipswich have been tanking it away at the top of the league, Leeds have definitely been the best of the rest so far, haven't they? And now it's showing in the table.
Yeah, without doubt. And again, you're going back to this game against Norwich, a huge test of character that he needed to show to come from 2 goals down, 2 really poor goals that they conceded. But they came through it, and again, like a lot of teams in this league, they were knocking on the door for a long period of time, and they showed some real quality when they needed to. And it's that coolness and calmness that really allows you to separate yourselves from the not the normal lot, but the teams that are going to be in around the playoffs, that are going to be knocking on the door of the top 6. You've got to be a special team, and Daniel Farke is proving it once again that he can get a lot out of this team. And I think you're looking at this game in isolation. It's a very Daniel Farke game where there's a little bit of chaos, a little bit of zest, a little bit of quality. There's all of it. And I think if you can carry on getting that out, it's not going to be a comfortable season, but it's going to be a fun ride for the Leeds fans.
Yeah, and that's one of his favourite topics. And they had a bumpy start, didn't they? Which was understandable considering the squad turnover in the summer. I think if they didn't have a bumpy start, it would have been very surprising. They've been steadily finding their groove, and when they've turned it on, it's been a bit frightening. The thing is just being able to turn it on week in, week out, which is a very difficult thing to do, of course, but Leeds have to, because of the high standards being set by that current top 2. If you look at the last 5 games, Leeds have smashed 3 of them and should have won by more in those games, produced a brilliant comeback against Norwich and then lost to Southampton. That's great. Now they need to essentially replicate this 5-game run and do it another 7 times, don't they? Which is a big ask, I know, but they're playing catch-up currently. Ipswich, I'm sure, will have dips as the season goes on. Leicester, I'm not so sure about. But even though Ipswich will have dips, I don't think there'll be a huge drop-off, as many people seem to think there is. So that's why consistency is going to be so important for Leeds in clawing away at the gap between them and the top 2. Otherwise, the top two just won't happen, then they'll just have to settle for the playoffs, won't they? A 3-word review here from Elliot on Norwich. No game management. Molman says we'll be relegated, which might be a bit dramatic. I think from a Norwich perspective, not only was it disappointing to throw away a 2-0 lead, it's made even more gut-wrenching by the fact that their former manager was in the opposing dugout. And with Norwich where they are now as a club, having finished in the bottom half of the Championship last season, now sat mid-table in the Championship this season after a promising start, which has seemingly faltered away. It's interesting to think, isn't it, where they would have been if they never sacked Daniel Farke in the first place.
It's very difficult to think like that, isn't it? It is, but you are right. Yeah. But then again, surely time was up for Farke. I think it comes down to the fact that the appointments since then, Dean Smith and David Wagner, although Wagner's looked like he's going to get something out of this team, probably not quite where it needs to be. So I think the last two appointments from Farke, they haven't built on the good work that Farke's put in, which obviously makes you long for the good times, the good old times. The fact that it's been so poor, and I think that's the key thing here. I think it's probably the right time for Farke to go, but also the last two appointments haven't been great. Which is, as I say, it's just you want to go back to your ex when your last two partners have been terrible.
Every time we talk about something like this, Justin always talks about his exes. Justin, you're a soon-to-be married man. Why do you bring up your exes all the time?
I'm in a very happy relationship, but what I will say is it's a very good analogy, isn't it? It's a very good analogy, the fact that you long for the times of old. You want those good times back. You want to go back to your holiday in the sun where it was nice and calm and everything was right before they ripped your heart out.
I'm hoping your current partner never listens to this podcast.
This doesn't.
No, we just might. I think the most likely scenario is if Daniel Farke were still in charge, is that they would be bottom of the Premier League right now, because that's what Norwich did under Daniel Farke, wasn't it? They were the perennial 21st best team in the country. I'm not sure if they would have finished last season. I'm not sure where they would have finished last season if they still had Daniel Farke. I can almost guarantee that it wouldn't have been as low as 13th in the table, though. I think a large part of where Norwich are now is because I still don't really totally understand what they're trying to do under David Wagner. Yes, they had a great start, but it's now 4 losses in 6, and I don't think this is a blip. I think we're starting to see what we're starting to see now is a club which needed to hit the reset button in the summer, but didn't. And Daniel Farke celebrating a win at Carrow Road is a reminder of how things were when Norwich City as a club had a clear plan and joined up thinking. Right now, there isn't.
You can almost guarantee that if Farke was in charge of Norwich, this would have been 3-2 to Norwich, this game. We're thinking that Leeds would have been 2-0 up and Norwich would have come back to 3-2. But again, it just comes down to the appointments that they've made just haven't been forward thinking enough. And you look at this game in isolation, which is probably a little bit of where Norwich are at under Wagner's defensive transitions. They were either matched or outnumbered on every occasion from Leeds. And Leeds are a very quick team to break, but unfortunately they've got the quality to punish opposition, and Wagner just did not adapt to that. And obviously with Barnes being injured and Sargent being injured, again, there's been a lack of adaptation, a lack of flexibility to adapt your team to the issues that you've got, and I think that's where things are unravelling for Wagner a little bit.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Justin. The pressure builds on Gareth Ainsworth after another loss for QPR. They were beaten 2-1 away at Huddersfield. 4 losses on the bounce now for them. This time last year, as we sit here right now, Justin, QPR were top of the Championship, which is just insane to think about, isn't it? Since then, they've won 28 points from 42 games, which is relegation form, isn't it? And this is a club with all sorts of problems, and I think that points record pretty much sums it all up.
Go back to my ex analogy.
Not again, please.
Long for the good times. No, it's horrendous. It's horrendous, and I think the fact that Gareth Ainsworth is continuously almost gaslighting the fans with positivity. Things aren't great, Gareth. Like, your performances are poor. You've lost to a near relegation rival, and performances they're not improving. Can I throw a quote at you that Ainsworth said post game, please?
Justin, you know I love Gareth Ainsworth quotes. It's my favourite part of the show.
Righto. Here we go. I'm a glass half full guy. The Blackburn game was not acceptable, and the transformation is something else. We've improved from Blackburn. Roll on the season because it's going to be a good one. I'm pretty sure we're going to finish above that line. What the fuck are you talking about?
I have no idea what he's talking about. This is the thing with Ainsworth, isn't it? He has a habit of seeing things completely differently to how everyone else is seeing it. And I get it's all about being positive, but
It's delusion.
it is delusion, isn't it?
It's delusion. There's no way around it. It's the fact that you go to that Watford game at the start of the season, and Ainsworth is talking about it's going to be a tough old season. Yeah, he's almost throwing in the towel before the season's got going. And now this season, it's saying it's going to be a good one.
And his standards of what a good one is, apparently, Justin, is literally just finishing 21st.
Well, he had a good season with Wickham, and they still got relegated. So what is a good season to Gareth Ainsworth? Is it getting relegated? What's the line for Gareth Ainsworth? Oh my God, I'm losing my temper thinking about it. There needs to be change quickly, and I need to get off this topic before I don't know, turn into the Hulk or something. It's yeah.
Ooh, I mean, I quite like to see
Boiling.
that personally. But you are right. It's now gone from Gareth Ainsworth should be sacked to how hasn't Gareth Ainsworth been sacked? And I admire a club putting faith in a manager. It doesn't happen enough in football nowadays. But there are certain occasions when it's obviously wrong to do that. And this is one of those occasions. He's been there for 8 months, and this is arguably the lowest point of that 8 months. There's very little sign of things getting better. They had one shot on target against Huddersfield, and that was the goal. It simply cannot continue like this. I'm not totally convinced that even if they do sack him, things will get better, though, because the club is a bit of a mess right now, isn't it? You referenced a piece in The Athletic in midweek, Justin. You've got first-team sources speaking out about how there's no plan to take the club forward. And that's why the problems aren't just going to be solved by simply sacking Gareth Ainsworth.
Well, yeah. The club needs to go through a lot of change, but the main change they need to make is ensuring that the first team squad has a manager that's capable of tapping into the quality that I believe they have.
They do have quality, don't they?
Well, exactly.
They do. This squad is a lot better than it is. The likes of Elias Chair, Chris Willock, though, the issue is with them. They are players who are basically passengers in a crap team. Well, not a crap team, but a team that's not doing very well is a better way of saying it. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. Because Elias Chair in a winning team is one of the best creative midfielders in the division.
Exactly.
But it's not happening.
Exactly. And we go to the mentality of the team and whether these players are playing for them. QPR have conceded 32% of their goals this season in the first 20 minutes of games. It's a third of your goals that you conceded in the first 20 minutes. You're not setting your team up right. You're not motivating them enough. It's dreadful. It truly, truly is dreadful. And I think if QPR are going to make change for the long term, they've got to think about the short term. And the short term is changing the manager. And as I say, we're not here to condone managers being sacked, but this positivity that he's throwing out is laughable. It is purely laughable. And the team isn't going to improve because of it.
Interestingly, the current bottom three in the Championship have a total of 17 points. That's the lowest points tally for a bottom three after 12 games in Championship history, which is good news for a club like Huddersfield. And this was Darren Moore's first victory as Huddersfield manager. They're 6 points clear of the bottom three with this result. And I mean, the way things are going, that could be a big 6 point gap. They're proving to be just a really difficult side to beat, aren't they? And that's the main thing Darren Moore has to do. He's only lost one of his games so far in charge. One of the reasons why they're so hard to beat is having defenders like Mikel Helik, who produced what I'm going to call the best bit of defending we have seen all season. I think the ball hit the post, fell straight to a QPR player, 6 yards out, open goal. All he has to do is tap it into the net. Then, like Superman, out of nowhere, comes Helik to block it. An unbelievable bit of defending. And he is an excellent defender in general, isn't he? I actually think he's by far their best player and really should be playing at a higher level than Huddersfield. I mean that with no disrespect to Huddersfield, but he's just a very, very good defender, isn't he?
Well, it's a surprise to see him not linked with more clubs last summer when he obviously joined Huddersfield, because obviously Huddersfield were going for a little bit of a transition. So for him to end up at a team that didn't really back the squad or invest in the team the way that they needed to, was a bit of a surprise, but the fact that they've got a really good back line, I think Darren Moore's going to tap into that. They were difficult to beat, but if you're looking at a contrast between QPR and Huddersfield, that Helix scenario that you mentioned of him superheroing that block on a shot is exactly where Huddersfield are at, with a manager who is clearly motivating the players and wanting to tap into the quality that they've got, which is the defensive mindset that they have, compared to a QPR team who just look down and out under Gareth Ainsworth. So that's the big contrast. But Darren Moore has got them playing, he's got them organised, defensive work rate is fantastic, and they've taken their moments, which again you can't really say for a lot of teams that are down there at the moment.
Millwall drew their first game since the departure of Gary Rowett. It finished 1-1 away at Preston. Here's a question for you, Justin. Now that Gary Rowett's gone, the longest serving managers in the Championship are Mark Robbins at Coventry and Nigel Pearson at Bristol City. Can you name the third longest serving?
I definitely saw this. I definitely saw this yesterday, and I can't remember it.
It's Ryan Lowe at Preston. Ryan Lowe at Preston is the third longest serving manager in the Championship. He's been there for less than 2 years and is already the third longest serving manager in the Championship. Incredible. I'm not going to lie to you, listener, this was not a great game. I got so bored that I started playing Agario. If you ever played that, Justin.
No. What is it?
It's a game where you start off as this little blob, and then you've got to eat little pellets and try to avoid.
You're a 29-year-old man.
I know, I used to play at uni, but it's just a very good fun game and very addictive as well. But it was a lot more entertaining than this game. If Norwich v Leeds was a great advert for the Championship, this game should have been blacklisted. But we got caught a bit off guard with the Gary Rowett departure midweek, Justin. So didn't really speak about it at length because it literally happened as we were recording. So let's talk about it now. Rowett spoke to Talk Sport in midweek and said it was a mutual thing and it felt like the right time with the club needing something different. So it sounds like from both sides they had accepted that he had taken the club as far as he can and it was time for a change, which in that case, fair play to Rowett, I suppose. It's not all bad news for him because I think he'll be linked with every championship job going, won't he, for the foreseeable future. But, you know, with Rowett mentioning that the club needing something different, it's interesting to see how different they could go, couldn't it?
You know, Millwall are in an interesting position. I think the fact that Gary Rowett stabilised them so much and got them in such a good, healthy place. I know they are sitting 14th in the table at the moment, but it's transformed the style of play and the perception around Millwall that I think they're in an attractive position to get potential applicants who might not have been interested in the job in years gone by, or the style of play of applicants might not have been interested in the style of play in years gone by. But for me, they certainly need someone who's going to play a high-tempo, forward-thinking style. So I think that the fact that I've seen the likes of Mick Beale, Neil Warnock, there's a couple of others who sort of fall under the line of pragmatic managers, I think they need to be a bit more forward-thinking and go for someone who's a little bit more progressive.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they went with a completely different style because that's just not what Millwall really do, is it? And I don't think the fans would necessarily accept anyone who tried to play it out from the goalkeeper. But the thing is, they have got a very good side here, haven't they? Is it good enough for the top six? I'm not sure. But the likes of Zian Fleming, Casper Denora, Joe Bryan, Brook Norton, Cuffy, him in particular, I rate very highly. There's some good players here who really should be playing at a possibly higher level than, you know, just top half Millwall at the moment. Yeah. So there's definitely foundations to work with here and maybe play something different, but I just don't think the Millwall fans will accept anything different. So I guess the question is, Justin, who should they get in next?
Well, I've seen Kevin Muscat touted and labelled. I know I said it as a joke earlier in the week. And I've not seen much
favourite,
of his...
Justin.
It's not a surprise. Obviously, he was linked heavily with the Rangers job as well. And obviously he's very highly favoured at Millwall, given his past exploits there. But don't talk to Neil Warnock about him, obviously. I've not seen much of his Yokohama Marinos side to really understand how he plays football, but he's been labelled as a progressive coach, which is that next step, I think, for Millwall. But whoever it's going to be, they need to play that high-tempo, aggressive, keep the opposition in their defensive third. It's a case of, does John Eustace tick that box? I think he probably falls into the category of Gary Rowett. Ian Evatt might be an interesting avenue. I think he was if you're thinking of a young coach who plays without fear, he might be a good appointment. But whoever it's going to be, they need to put more emphasis on the quality in the attacking third rather than the defensive third.
Yeah, Muscat's a very interesting shout, isn't he? Because he's followed a very similar career path to Ange Postecoglou so far, because he succeeded him at both Melbourne Victory in Australia and Yokohama in Japan. Obviously, very difficult to say how good a manager he is, because managing in Australia and Japan is very different to here, but that's what people thought about Postecoglou, and look how that's going. Plus, he's already got that affinity with Millwall, having played there. So I'm not going to say he knows the club, because I don't want to go down that avenue, but why not go with Muscat? My philosophy on managers now is you may as well have a gamble, especially if you're a solid championship side like Millwall, because realistically, what have they got to lose? They're not going to go down or anything like that. The only risk is that they take a step back, which if that happens, it happens. But they're a very sensibly run club, so there's no chance of them, going into oblivion anytime soon.
Yeah.
They need to take the next step, and sometimes you've got to be brave to do that. So if Muscat is, a promising manager and obviously very familiar with the club, knows the club, then why not give him a go? I don't see why not. I'd be all aboard that, because it's much better for me than getting in a familiar face who knows the championship, but at the same time just hasn't really, got much in the way of a great CV of taking clubs to that next level. You may as well take a gamble. Let's take a quick break just now. For that, we'll talk about Leicester, who won again, and Sheffield Wednesday, who lost again. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. Leicester have now had the best start after 12 games in Championship history. They have 33 points following their 3-1 victory away at Swansea. A quick word on that Matt Grimes goal. The technique on that, unbelievable.
Come on, Ryan. Right, don't get me wrong. It's coming down from a height, and it's a lovely connection, but it's taken a deflection off Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. For me, deflected goals are immediately ruled out of being spectacular as soon as they hit the arse of somebody.
I apologise. I didn't realise it was deflected, because it looked like it just went straight in from the one angle I saw, but good goal, I guess. 3 word reviews here from Leicester fans. Mark says, pissing the league. The secret run coach says, extending our lead. Jeremy says, just another win. Sherlock says, Yannick's knob scored. That's in reference to Yannick Vestergaard, who scored with his knob. Leicester were exceptional, which is no surprise to anyone. We might have to buy a thesaurus soon to come up with new ways of complimenting this Leicester side, Justin, because they already look like they may very well run away with the league the way things are going. And that thesaurus could have come in very handy for describing Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, who absolutely ran the show once again. I think we must emphasise that Leicester's brilliant start has very much been a team effort so far, but there's one player who has unquestionably been standing out amongst the rest so far and is just the best of the bunch. It's Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, isn't it?
Everyone takes the piss about us talking about Ipswich so much, but why do they not reference Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall? Because I think we mention him just as often as we mention or praise Ipswich.
Probably more, Justin, actually, isn't it? You're
So
absolutely
in reality, this is the Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall podcast, not the Ipswich Town podcast or the Second Tier podcast. We are solely dedicated to the career excellence of Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. And to be honest with you, he's the best player in the league, playing in the best team in the league, and it's showing. I don't think there's much more we can add other than he's a very good player, playing in a very good midfield. I think Harry Winks deserves credit because he's not put a foot wrong, and Wilfred Ndidi has been almost transformed into more of a box-to-box number 8. And I think Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall's got that licence to roam and do whatever the hell he wants, and he's exploiting team after team after team, and it's quite frankly embarrassing.
It is. You're absolutely right. I think it would be interesting to see what happened if he got injured, because while Leicester are obviously an exceptional side, he is the one who's at the centre of everything. But let's not take anything away from Leicester or him. He's just a phenomenal player who should be playing in the top half of the Premier League as far as I'm concerned. And if he didn't get relegated last season then and was playing in the Premier League this season, then I don't think he'd be too far away from the England squad the way he's going, although there is a lot of competition in that particular part of the squad, isn't there? But he's just a fantastic player, and it's getting to the stage now where he may be amongst one of the best to have ever stepped down to this level. When you're comparing, greatest championship players ever, it's obviously very early on for us to even open up that particular debate, and people will have different opinions about it. But in terms of just sheer class, this guy is right up there, isn't he? And
he's all right.
He's he is. It's going to be interesting come the end of the season to kind of compare him to some of the best players to ever step down to this level. He shouldn't be at this level, but he is. So might as well enjoy him while he's here. Sheffield Wednesday have now got the worst record after 12 games in Championship history. They have just 3 points to their name after losing 1-0 away at Watford. This was new manager Danny Röhl's first game, but if Wednesday are going to stay up, he's going to have to really roll back the years, isn't he, and get the best out of this Wednesday side. Otherwise, Justin, heads will rule.
How am I meant to follow up with that? What do you want me to say?
I'm just saying, Justin, it just rolls off the tongue with me.
Fantastic. Congratulations. You've ruined Danny Röhl for everybody.
Look at you, rolling your eyes at me. Chris's 3-word review for Wednesday. Better, still lost, which is fair. It's going to take time into it before we can even start assessing Danny Röhl as a Sheffield Wednesday manager. But 19-year-old Yasser Asprilla got the goal for Watford. I'm a big fan of his, Justin. He first caught my eye early on last season. I'm just surprised, really, that he hasn't played more for Watford.
I just think because he's young, he's going to be inconsistent, and I think we've seen that from him. We've seen it from a lot of Watford players, really, and I think that's probably more of a symptom of maybe changing managers and that lack of consistency inside of play. But it's moments like this that remind you of the quality that he's got, because he just kept dribbling, and at any point you think he's going to be off balance, he's going to lean too far away, he's going to scuff his shot, but every passage of the run that he did was just so elegant and poised and well balanced, and the shot was fantastic with the finish, and it reminds you of the quality that he's got, and also that Watford got in the bag as well. He just needs Ishmael some consistency and a good old hammer to tap into it, because there's certainly a lot of ability there. Definitely a lot of ability there. He's one of those players who, as a fan, you just love watching, because he loves running with the ball, but he can also play that final ball, which doesn't really necessarily happen all the time with 19-year-old players. You see ones who can, run past players for days, but when it actually comes to producing at the other ends, that's not always the case with these players. The thing is, I'm not necessarily sure he's a Valérien Ismaël kind of player, is he? Which may be one of the reasons why he's not featured too much so far. Adam Leventhal was writing about him in The Athletic, and the Watford hierarchy apparently regard him very highly. They believe he's the most promising talent at the club and the most likely to go for big money in the future. To be fair to Watford, got a good record with that, haven't they, with the likes of Richarlison, João Pedro. He's only going to get better, though, if he gets game time. So either Ishmael has got to move things around to accommodate him and give him more game time, or Asprilla's got to adapt his game to fit into the Ishmael style. Is it going to be worth it if Ishmael's not going to be there for the foreseeable future? I don't really know, but whatever the case, I want to see more of Yasser Asprilla, because I think he's just a brilliant player to watch. A 95th minute winner from Ryan Fraser saw Southampton beat Hull 2-1. Great limbs here for this one. It was 95th minute winner. It's always going to be that. The thing is, though, a lot of Southampton fans couldn't make it to Hull because of the aforementioned chaos with the weather. Have we actually mentioned it on the show yet? No, we were talking about it before, weren't we? Before we started recording. The weather, if anyone's listening from abroad, has been awful in the UK over the past couple of days, so a lot of Southampton fans couldn't make it up to Hull, but the ones who did were very much duly rewarded. The star of the show for Southampton was Kyle Walker-Peters, who provided a great assist for the first goal and made a crucial block at the other end. And he's another one of those, Justin, who's come down to the Championship. Shouldn't really be playing at this level, should he? Because he looks a level above the rest. He's probably a victim of Southampton selling too many of their best players, because he certainly would have. I'm sure if a bid was entertained, he probably would have gone, because he is an exceptional player. And again, one of the standout players last season in them getting relegated from the Premier League. And certainly, I imagine if he is in the Premier League this season, he might be knocking on the door for the Euros. Maybe at left wing back, maybe not a right back.
There's too many right backs in there.
Too many right backs.
The thing is, though, I think that's a really interesting point. If England weren't so inundated with incredible right backs, then Kyle Walker-Peters probably would be closer to the England squad. And then, if that was the case, I think he probably would have been picked up in the summer, because people would have said, well, he's too good to be playing at this level. Yeah. But he may have gone slightly under the radar because he's not closer to the England picture. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it's almost James Ward-Prowse, a lot of vocality around him, a lot of talk around him. The set pieces, the ability to be a box-to-box player and to be a leader for Southampton. A lot of light shining on him, but I think that's probably taken it away from others, which is obviously a benefit to Southampton this season. But certainly Kyle Walker-Peters is a quality individual. Has gone through the motions a little bit, sometimes falling asleep defensively, but I think he's switched on in the last few games, along with the whole team, it seems, at Southampton. So yeah, looking forward to seeing, because Russell Martin's systems get wing backs high, get them wide, get them in behind the back line, and they become really dangerous individuals in his system. So yeah, I think it's only going to get better in that sense from Kyle Walker-Peters, and I think we're only going to see more from him in that final third.
Yeah, I think he's the most fouled player in the division.
Right back.
Yeah, that's quite impressive though, isn't it? Because he's just so good at running at players, and he's able to deliver as well. So it's quite rare, really, for a right back to be as influential as him. But he should be playing in the Premier League. I'm surprised he didn't get picked up in the summer. But Southampton have got him, so make the most of it while they've got him. Southampton have now actually crept up the table, haven't they? After that well-publicised disaster spell, they've now won 10 points from a possible 12 and snuck up to 5th. They're probably not as far along as Leeds are, obviously not as far along as Ipswich and Leicester, but it seems like Southampton are getting there and could very well have a say in this promotion race.
No, without a shadow of a doubt. I think the key thing is the character of the team is completely changed. There's a lot more steel about them. There's a lot more grit your teeth and get on with it, sort of. And I think that's what we've needed to see from them, to be really basic with the assessment of them. But it's so true, because they were so soft. It was so soft in between the September international break and the October one, and it finally started to click just for. And obviously 10 points from 12, 4 unbeaten, is a really good place. But performance-wise, I think the last 4 performances have been building, which is a huge positive.
Yeah, I would agree with that just now. I think there's still a bit of teething issues there. When I watch Southampton and I compare them to Leeds, I see a lot more from Leeds than I do Southampton. But we always said there was going to be a slow start for Russell Martin and Southampton. Maybe it's been a bit more extreme of a slow start than we imagined, but that tide has now turned. They've gone round that corner, and now they're looking like the real deal. And ultimately, they've got so much quality and abundance that they had to finish in the top 6. It would have been a crime if they don't. That's still not obviously set in stone, but it looks like they are going to be amongst there, doesn't it? And it's going to be quite difficult to see them not finishing in the top 6 at the very least. If this is just a sign of them getting better and better, then maybe the top 2 isn't completely out of the question, but we need to see a lot more, won't we? 3-word review for Hull from Harry. Scared to shoot. It's just 1 win in 7 now for Hull, drawing a lot of games, which is something that Liam Mazzini was doing quite a lot with Hull last season. Bristol City 1, Coventry 0, a brilliant win for Bristol City. Plenty of injuries as well. A bit fortunate perhaps with Coventry hitting the bar twice, but without a doubt an excellent 3 points for them. Very interesting comments from Nigel Pearson after the game though. He told the local press, "My position's not been secure, which irritates me." When asked to expand on that, he said, "Why don't you ask somebody above me for once? See if you can find somebody who's going to say anything. The last 2 weeks have been very irritating for me. I'm not exactly in the best situation, but I'm fine, and I'll get better, and I'll honour my contract. So we'll see where it goes." So, doesn't sound too happy, Justin. It sounds like the club might make a change, which is a bit harsh.
I think it is harsh. I know we've criticised Pearson, or haven't been big fans of Pearson in months gone by, but he certainly deserves the opportunity to take this Bristol City team on. But that being said, would you offer him a new 2-year deal at the end of the season? Or would you offer him a 2-year deal now to extend his contract beyond the end of the season? I don't think I would be committed to doing so, but I understand it from Nigel Pearson's point of view that, you look at the table, they sit in 8th. They're 2 points of Southampton in 5th and 1 point of 6th. They're in a decent position. I don't think they've been fantastic yet this season, but it's one of those situations where you understand it from both sides. Pearson wants to have a commitment, but the board are probably looking elsewhere for that next step, a bit like Gary Rowett at Millwall.
Yeah, and I know I've been plenty critical about Nigel Pearson over the years at Bristol City, because my thing has always been, look, Nigel Pearson's done a fantastic job in steadying the ship there. Bristol City spent a lot of money, which I think a lot of people forget over the past few years. And he's done a great job in just steadying the ship, taking them away from the relegation battle and getting them into a solid mid-table position. That's great. He's done a great job in that time. But at the end of the day, if Bristol City want to be competitive as a club and take the step to the next level, I'm not sure that's necessarily going to happen with Nigel Pearson in charge. And now that we've seen with Millwall and Gary Rowett, it seems like that's kind of a similar position. I think Millwall are slightly further ahead in the scale of things compared to Bristol City. But put it this way, if Bristol City had a different manager in charge, I'd be feeling a lot more excited about them. With Nigel Pearson, I just see it being consistently mid-table / bottom half. I don't think they're going to get anywhere quickly with Nigel Pearson. I know that's harsh because he has done a great job in the time that he's been there, and I maybe have been too harsh on him in the past. But ultimately, football's about getting places, isn't it? And I don't see Bristol City doing that with Nigel Pearson.
Well, I think the scenario in Millwall sacking Gary Rowett to make that next step, I think is very similar to the one that Nigel Pearson's in at Bristol City. They've invested heavily. They've got a good balanced squad. I know they've got some injuries and probably need a little bit more going into it, especially in the final third. But they need to be performing better under him. I don't think we've seen a really good performance from Bristol City yet this season. We've seen some inconsistency, which is going to hold them back. And it's going to hold them back at some point in the season. So I think that's probably, again, where the scepticism comes from for Nigel Pearson.
There was quite a shock at the Bet365 Stadium. Stoke beating Sunderland 2-1 in the Alex Neil derby. Ryan Mahy with his first Stoke goal. Rob's three-word review on Sunderland: lacklustre but cheated. That's in reference to a couple of contentious decisions in this one. Stoke's first goal had a hint of handball about it, and Sunderland had a good penalty shout turned down. Very debatable decisions, those two. Luke McNally scored the winner for Stoke, which is good because we get to put the spotlight on him because he's a very good player, isn't he?
He's a fantastic player. I've said it time and time again that I think one of the key reasons as to why Coventry was so defensively good last season, in the second half of last season, is because of the addition of Luke McNally, which is tells you the quality that Burnley had last season. The fact they couldn't get into the Burnley squad, and that's why he was loaned out to Coventry. But yeah, Stoker's certainly, I thought, very fortunate to get him because there was a lot of clubs queuing up for him, and he's shown his quality. He's the type of player you need. He's a very composed defender, and again, if you're looking to play out from the back but have a solid option, Luke McNally ticks those boxes, and he's showing it time and time again. Yeah,
brilliant player. And if I'm being brutally honest, I'm surprised that he went to Stoke because I think really he should be playing for a club looking to get into the top six. I know Stoke fans will be thinking to themselves, we should be looking to get into the top six, but I think that's quite a way off, unfortunately, this season. But, we had a bit of a back and forth with Stoke fans about how good their transfer window was. I've still certainly got my doubts around that, but I think without a doubt the best signing of the bunch was probably Luke McNally, just because he was fantastic for Coventry last season. And it's a bit strange that, as I say, a player who was starting pretty much every game for a team which got to the playoff final last season is now playing for a side which is looking towards the bottom half, really, based on the way things are going so far. But yeah, a really, really good player. Still very young as well. Wouldn't surprise me to see him playing at a much higher level than he is right now in the future. A Joe Rankin Costello goal saw Blackburn beat Cardiff 1-0. I haven't got much on this game. Justin, is there anything you wanted to say?
I wanted to pick out Sondre Tronstad. I thought he was a warrior in this game. Deserved credit for his role in the win. I think that's the only thing I'd pick out. But yeah, it's another decent win for Blackburn, who needed it back-to-back wins after some not heavy losses, but heavy quantitative losses.
Yeah, their games have been very interesting, haven't they? Because it's been very chaotic, Blackburn games so far. So a good win for them there. Justin's banker for this weekend, West Brom v Plymouth, ended goalless. Three-word review from Sam, who's a Baggies fan. Boring as fuck, which is a good analysis of the game.
I expected goals in this game.
Yeah, you would have thought there would be goals in this game. I think if there's one game that I didn't expect to be goalless this weekend, it probably would have been that one. But a great result for Plymouth, considering their away record. Michael Cooper back in goal for Plymouth as well. There's a very highly rated keeper there. And finally, Rotherham v Ipswich on Friday night was postponed on grounds of supporter safety. It was announced 3 hours before kick-off, which I think is a bit poor from Rotherham. Justin, do you agree?
maybe not from Rotherham. I think it's the wider authorities who should have foreseen the flooding and the impact it's going to have on travel situation. You've got Ipswich fans coming from Ipswich, obviously, a very long way, and obviously the stadium's right by a river, which eventually broke its banks. But it was the wider chaos that should have been brought into thinking. So I don't think it's down to Rotherham as a club. I just think it's the wider authorities who maybe should have made a decision on that a lot sooner than 3 hours before kick-off.
Yeah, maybe it's not Rotherham. Maybe I'm being harsh there. I don't really understand how it works when it comes to a game getting abandoned. But someone has massively ballsed up here. I will emphasise again, for anyone who's listening abroad, ridiculous amounts of rain on Friday, particularly across the Midlands and north of England. I mean, that's not even mentioning what's going on in Scotland. So much so that I can't believe there weren't more games called off this weekend, really. Now, I completely understand that it's easy to say it's bad from Rotherham or the authorities, whoever, for not calling off earlier in hindsight. But the train station there was a good couple of feet underwater, and that was the case at midday. So maybe they should have thought, yeah, maybe this isn't going ahead. But Rotherham put out a statement earlier in the day saying that they were confident the game was going to go ahead. So someone shouldn't have let that go ahead, first of all. Ultimately, Rotherham's ground seems to be a bit more susceptible to heavy rain than most places. So they should know better, really. And I mean, the entrances to the ground were also flooded, well, some of them were, which, wouldn't have just happened instantly. It would have taken a bit of time for that to build up. So I'm not calling for a fine or Ipswich to get awarded the points or something like that. Just a bit of foresight to call it early instead of waiting until the point where all those Ipswich fans would have almost certainly left home, would have been a bit more sensible, I think. As I say, don't know if that's Rotherham's fault or whoever, but 3 hours before kick-off is extremely poor. Let's do the polls just in. This is the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter because we want to get their thoughts. What are you doing with your eyebrows?
It's my thinking face. It's an anticipation thinking face.
For anyone who's listening to the podcast instead of watching it on YouTube, then Justin was for some reason doing a dance with his eyebrows. I have no idea what he was doing there, but he's clearly very excited about the polls. This is the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter because we want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the Championship. So the first question we asked was this: who would you prefer in charge of your club, Wayne Rooney or John Eustace?
John Eustace.
It's a dickhead question to put out there, but I went and did it anyway. 85% of people said John Eustace, 15% said Wayne Rooney. Where will Norwich finish this season? Top 6, top half, bottom half?
I'm sort of going towards bottom half.
I'm also going slightly towards bottom half. I think my prediction of Norwich being the big underachievers this season is starting to look a bit more like it's coming to fruition than it was after the first 6 games, isn't it? 70% of people said top half, 17% said bottom half, 13% said top 6. It's worth remembering, when Josh Sargent comes back, they're a different team, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because at the moment they are relying so much on Gabriel Sara, it's quite embarrassing.
Dare I say, maybe a different manager at some point in the season if things don't go particularly well with David Wagner. That might improve things.
Maybe, Justin. And finally, what car do you drive? Petrol, diesel, electric? Don't drive.
I drive an electric.
Yeah. Yes, you do, Justin. Do you want to tell our friends what happened?
I went for a 5k run with my friends 10 miles away Saturday morning. I drove through a little bit of floodwater and my car went from 40 miles to 10 miles to 5 miles within a 1 mile stretch, which isn't ideal. My car then, once it broke down, my car ran out of battery, pathetically trying to get up a hill at 3 miles per hour. It then started to roll back. I was then stuck 300 yards away from my house and I had to push my car into someone's drive who fortunately had a Tesla. It was embarrassing.
This is what you get for trying to save the planet. Don't get all smug on us.
The floods, I'm trying to prevent the floods, and they fucked me.
We'll leave that there. 50% of people said petrol, 26% said don't drive, 19% said diesel, 5% said electric. So you're very much in the minority here, Justin.
We're a brotherhood. That's what we are.
Yeah. Now it's time for this.
Hi, Simon Grayson here.
Yes, it's time for Simon Grayson's Hateful Eight. So Justin is going to ask me to name 8 of a certain subject. All I've got to do is name all 8. So, for example, if he would say name Steve Bruce's last 8 clubs, I would say Villa, that's 1 down. Newcastle, that's another down. But if I were to say Weymouth, I would lose a life. So all I need to do is get all 8 answers without losing all of my lives. How many lives am I getting, Justin?
Simon Grayson's going to give you 4, Ryan.
4?
4?
I mean, I thought 3 was the limit, but...
Is it?
Yeah, we'll limit it at 3 because
we
we've got
okay,
time
3.
constraints. But go ahead. This sounds like it's going to be a shitter of a question.
I don't think it is. I enjoyed it. I played it yesterday. Wayne Rooney obviously took charge of Birmingham this weekend, making him a long line of former England internationals managing in the Championship. So with that in mind, I want you to name for me the last 8 England internationals to have managed in the Championship.
Ooh.
There are some corkers in here.
That is a good question. I'll tell you what. I like that. Not including Wayne Rooney.
We're not including Wayne Rooney.
Well, Michael Carrick's the obvious one.
Correct. 34 caps for England.
I don't think there's that many, so I'm quite confident that Frank Lampard must be in there.
Frank Lampard is one of them. 106 caps. Obviously 18-19 with Derby. He is 6th on my list.
6th? So it's been 5 since him. Ooh. All right then. That's very interesting, isn't it? I'm just trying to row back now to try and remember. Steve Bruce didn't play for England, famously, infamously.
I thought you'd say him.
I nearly did. And now it's becoming plenty obvious that I'm just trying to waste time now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I'm struggling to think of England.
You've got to think outside the box.
Outside the box, you say?
That's not a clue.
Just for the interest of saving time, I'll throw John Terry out there, even though I know he's not in there.
Incorrect. You've lost a life. Pathetic.
That is pathetic. Oh, I've got one. Lee Bowyer.
Lee Bowyer is one. 1 cap for England.
Yes.
1 cap for England. Obviously last managed Birmingham City in 21-22. He's 3rd on my list.
I think this is the general theme. It's literally players who flirted with the England squad once, and that's it. There isn't anyone now, is there?
Just Michael Carrick.
Just Michael Carrick, good. Apart from Rooney, of course. Come
on, Ryan. Throw him out.
I'm seriously struggling. Sorry, Finn, you're going to have to do a lot of editing here. No, I'm seriously struggling.
Right. Just name a name. Just give me a name.
You want a name, do you? I'll go with Ryan Lowe.
Incorrect. 1 life remaining.
This is a really bad showing, but I'm struggling to think of just England players who have gone on to be managers. It's a good question, I'll give you that.
You're going to kick yourself as soon as I go through them. You honestly will.
No, I'm going to have to tap out, I think, Justin.
You're tapping out, right.
I'm seriously struggling.
Next on my list.
Can you give me a club, and I should be able to do it from that.
Reading.
Mark Bowen?
It's very Welsh. Is he Welsh?
I think he is, yeah. No.
Okay.
Oh, Paul Ince. Oh.
There we go. That was dreadful. Honestly, dreadful. Dreadful showing.
My tactic was, I was going through the England team of like the mid-noughties and trying to go through them, and I don't think that was the right way to go about it.
No, there are some absolute corks in here. Really obvious one that you've missed
Give me
out.
another club. Another club.
Bournemouth.
Scott Parker.
There's another one.
From Bournemouth?
Yep.
Jason Tyndall? Oh, Jonathan Woodgate.
Jonathan Woodgate.
Yeah.
So that's your top 5. Then you've got Frank Lampard in 6th. And the last 2 are quite tricky.
Clubs.
Burton Albion.
Clough.
Nigel Clough.
Fucking hell, I would have never got that in a million years.
14 caps.
Who's the other one?
Last one is Huddersfield.
So this must have been before Wagner.
Yes, literally right before Wagner.
Oh, I don't know. Go on.
Chris Powell.
Oh, bloody hell. Now that you've read out the answers, this seems ridiculously hard. I thought it was a good question, but I would have never even thought about Chris. Well, all the bloody managers you've just mentioned there were playing ages ago.
Chris Powell retired in 2010. Nigel Clough technically retired in 2009.
No one remembers he played for England, Justin.
That's not.
I think I did love to get three there.
No, you've messed that up. Embarrassing.
I will admit, three from that was... I probably should have got Scott Parker, but the rest of them were incredibly hard. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's been Simon Grayson's Hateful Eight. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. One final piece of admin. We had a great response after asking listeners from abroad where they're listening from. We had plenty in America, including Matthew in South Carolina, Chris from Philadelphia, amongst others. We already knew we had quite a few listeners stateside, but we also had people from Sweden and Bulgaria. We're basically across Europe, Justin. So thank you to those listening to us abroad. We will continue to fill you in on the second tier. And of course, thank you to listening here in Britannia as well. As always, if you could leave a 5-star review on whichever podcast platform you are listening to us on, it will go a long way to helping us grow as a podcast. So we will be eternally grateful for that. But otherwise, we'll be back again on Thursday to go through all the midweek games here in the Championship. So we bloody look forward to seeing you then. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I'll be Justin Peach.
And a huge thank you for listening.